Alright, we're back again, and this time around we're still taking on enumerable property of object. And remember, we have our baby object here still, and we have worked with the enumerable property and see how we can enumerate through an object with this line 65 down to line 73 on our previous class. But that is when enumerable is true, because I told you that earlier that we can set enumerable false. Since it's an attribute of an object, we can set enumerable true, as well as writable, as well as configurable. These are all attributes of the properties of each of the objects of the object baby, and the properties are name, color, age, hobby, and all these can be set to true or false as regards to their attributes, that is writable, enumerable, and configurable. But here now, we want to deal with setting enumerable false and see what happens. And I've told you earlier that enumerable is to enumerate, list, is produce a sequence of each members of a body, and each members of these are enumerable. But if we set it to false by running our code here, line 56, that also tell that we're defining using an object or defined property, passing the object baby, and picking the property which is name on line 49, and setting this attribute to be enumerable to false, no longer true. You can set this to true. By default it is true, but we are changing the default behavior to false. And if that is done, what will happen to this property, this key? If we enumerate, can we find it? Okay, let's execute this and see, and also execute this after, because this is above, this is below, so it runs from top to bottom, if you can remember. Then since I've set it to false, then let me do my save now, and I've saved it. And this code I've run, I just run now, and here is it. Enumerable is no longer true for the name property, and because it's no longer true for the name property, we couldn't find name, which is here on line 49 on our browser here, because enumerating it was false, so it wasn't part of the object. Rather, it wasn't part of the properties that should be enumerated, that should be listed in this sequence, in this object. So that is what setting enumerable does. But if I'm to set it to true now, just setting here true now and save, you discover that it will show up. It will show up again, and you can see its name has shown up. So we've set it to false, that it should not be enumerated. Alright, if I set it back to false, set it back to false, you see that it goes off, it's no longer enumerable. And what other effect does it have, setting enumerable to false? If I close up here now and comment this out, if I comment this out, alright, and I come here, this adjacent just stringify. This is to serialize our object. If I save it now, since I've set enumerable to false, you can see also it does not show up since enumerable is false. So when we just serialize, or we serialize an object, any property that is set to false won't show up in the list. You can see what this does for us. It stringifies. It converts every property and value to a string. That is what it does. Alright, and I guess I've explained this in the previous class, why we may not be able to see object when it is logged, when it is shown on the browser like this, except you just stringify it, except you serialize it by using this method, json.stringify. Okay, apart from that, we could also see that if we do an object.keys of this baby again, object, since enumerable is set to false, and save, I'm saving it now, and it runs, you discover that object.keys again does not show us the name property on this object. Now, this object keys is a method that picks an object and takes the keys of the object, which are these: name, color, age, hobby, and return them as an array of data, of strings, array of strings. That is what it does. Now let me console log it so that you can see it clearly by running line 60. If I console log it, you can see it here. This is color, and this is color, and this is age, hobby, and the rest. You can see that it is an array here. The data type is actually an array, and that is what that object.key does. It takes the properties of an object and converts it to an array, only the properties, and leave the values alone. Now, if I want to change the value, if I want to touch the values, there's an object also that I can use, object method, that will do that for me. I'm getting this out of the way. Now, if I pick object values, it will take only the values and convert them to what? To an array. When I save now and run it, you see fair to play as well came out. And remember, our name property is not here, rather because it's set to false here. You can see it. So if we do object.keys, it will not show up on our browser. If we do object.values, it will not show up on our browser. If I still do object.values and console log, this will give me an array on the console of the values of the object, fair to play. You get me? So object.keys and object.values, you can use it to pick the values and object and the values and keys of an object and convert it to an array respectively. So object.key picks the keys of an object and return it as an array. Object.value picks the values of an object and return them as an array. And that is what it does. All right. Okay. So since that has been set, we can also change these properties as well. We can also change it and pick a color and save. And you see that Mike for object.value shows up, but for color, since we have set a numerable for color false, the color does not show up any longer on the object.values results. You can see it in this array. We can't find a fair there. And if I remove this now and also go with this, the same thing applies, and save, to only pick the name, age, and hobby. It will not pick color because I've set color now. I've passed the property color to be enumerably false. So in that case, if I enumerate it also, loop through it, it will not be among the thing that will show up. It's not loopable, if I may use that language. Look at it now. If I save, and you can see that color is no longer there. The same thing applies to all the properties and values of the object BB. So this is where we'll stop for today again. For this enumerable property, it's quite handy but quite important in some use cases as you develop some applications. Thank you.